Hello chaps and chapesses, and this week, looking outside, the weather's foul, I'm going to give you my top 10 reasons why you should try saltwater fly fishing. I did my first saltwater trip in the late 1990s. It was a family trip and I had the opportunity to go and fish in Belize. And having been a trout and salmon fisherman before that, especially chalk streams, I wasn't quite sure how I was going to adapt. But I got onto the salt flats and I started seeing tailing fish. I was in the sunshine, I was on a tropical island, I was at Turneffe Atoll. We caught a bunch of bonefish that week, we caught permit, caught my first permit on my first ever saltwater trip, which I've been continually trying to recreate the experience, but you know, that's permit fishing. We caught barracuda, we caught tarpon, and it opened up a huge avenue to me, which I'd never even previously considered. And since then, I think my addiction for saltwater fishing has almost overtaken my addiction for freshwater fishing. It's so varied. There are so many different places to go. You never quite know what's going to be swimming around the corner. I think that if you have been doing a lot of freshwater fishing, maybe a lot of salmon fishing, saltwater fishing trips can be considerably cheaper. And you can end up in some of the most beautiful places in the world. It's hot, it's lovely, and I'm going to give you my top 10 reasons why you should try saltwater fly fishing. Coming in at number 1 is value for money. If you compare a saltwater fly fishing trip to a freshwater fly fishing trip, something like the difference between going to Turneffe Atoll in Belize or something like going to Iceland, you're going to be paying about half of what you would be paying for a freshwater trip, approximately. Depending on where you go, obviously, and depending what level of accommodation you're looking at. But you can do saltwater fishing very cheaply indeed. But even the very, very top end saltwater fly fishing operations, such as Alphonse or Cosmolido or Providence Atoll, you're going to be paying less than you would for a Russian salmon fishing trip. The next would be, these places are some of the most stunning places on the earth. There is nothing quite like poling a skiff across a salt flat. White sand beaches, tropical palm trees. It's a beautiful tropical paradise, and what is not to love about that? You can fish in your shorts, you can fish in light clothing, you don't have to be wading in thick thermals and waders, and it's just a wonderful release, and it does take you to some of the most spectacular places in the world. My next one is translation of skills. What do I mean by that? Those skills that we have learned while trout fishing on chalk streams or whether we're salmon fishing, skills such as casting accurately, maybe double hauling, being able to cast sidearm, tuck under the wind, those accuracy skill set easily translate straight into the salt and will give you a big advantage. On the flip side of that, those people who have done years of salmon fishing, you have learned how to battle large fish, which is another skill which is extremely adaptable to saltwater fishing. A lot of the stuff that we've learned in the fresh, we can adapt and translate straight into the salt, and you can pick up very, very quickly the skills that are required to fish on the flats. Sight fishing is really what makes saltwater fishing entirely addictive, because you're not just sight fishing for a small trout or a grayling. Sometimes you could be sight fishing for a 40-50 pound giant trevally in a surf line, a large tailing bumphead parrotfish, a permit which could potentially make you go completely apoplectic and weak at the knees, because I know that that's what it does to me. All of these species, the entire experience is visual. You can watch the fish move onto the fly. You can watch its every movement. You can see how its radar kicks off and it starts scurrying over and it investigates your offering. And then you watch it track your fly back, and then hopefully you'll hook up. So the sight fishing element is what makes saltwater fishing so incredibly exciting. The next one I want to talk about is power. One of the reasons that trout fishermen then go to salmon fishing is because they're looking for a fish which is going to give them a bigger battle. It's going to produce a much bigger fight. There isn't a saltwater fish in the world which would probably knock the socks off one of those fish. You're talking battles which even a small bonefish of 1.5 to 2 pounds is going to rip off 50-60 yards of backing off your reel on the first run. You're probably going to get 2 or 3 runs out of those fish. And when you start targeting 5-6 pound bonefish, some of the permit, giant trevally especially, they're going to pull your arms out of your sockets unless you hang on. It's a huge battle. So it's not only the sight fishing element of it, it's actually the fight itself which makes it so incredibly exciting. My next reason is species variation. I love the fact that I can walk onto a salt flat and I've got no idea what's going to swim around the corner next. It could be any one of 80 species which you can target on the fly, each one demanding its own little nuances, its own tackle variations, fly choices. It means you have never-ending variation in your fishing, which means that no 2 trips are ever the same. And that for me is one of the biggest reasons I love saltwater fishing. And then I'm going to talk about gas. Gas, you say? Gas. Gear acquisition syndrome. There are those of us who suffer from gas. If you are going to get into a saltwater scenario, it's a gas sufferer's dream because of the fact that you need not just one setup, but you will probably require a minimum of 3. So that means you're going to need a 7, 9, 11 or a 12, depending on where you're fishing. You need all of the paraphernalia and kit that goes with it. It's a whole different variety of tackle that you have a chance to collect. And we all know he who dies with the most toys wins. My next reason is big fish. Fishing in saltwater gives you an opportunity to target some really big fish on a fly rod. Whether that's an 80-pound GT in the surf line, whether it's 80 to 150 pound tarpon off the front of a flat skiff, or whether it's fishing for billfish on a fly rod. I mean, a lot of people don't even know that you can catch billfish on a fly rod. Sailfish, marlin, absolutely you can. With the right set of tools and the right skills, landing these fish is entirely possible. And nothing fights quite like a sailfish. Seeing that fish careen across the ocean like that, greyhounding out of the air, it's absolutely incredible. So if you like catching big fish, then saltwater fishing should definitely be up on there on your agenda. My next big reason that I love the salt so much is learning new skills and techniques. As I touched on briefly, there are many different species for you to target, and each one requires its own skill set, which means that you have a whole different fish to fish for every day. So whether you are going to be hunting a bonefish and creeping along the flats, quietly dropping a small fly at distance, targeting an individual fish, whether you're going to try and hunt a permit, which is tailing in deeper water, requires heavier flies, whether you're going to move into tarpon fishing, which requires much heavier kit, and then you need to be able to present the fly at the right angle. Every day in the salt is a school day. And even after all of these years, I'm still learning things on a daily basis. And to me, that is extremely exciting. And lastly, and I think a really important reason for you to try fly fishing in the salt, is most of these destinations you can take non-fishers to. You can take family, you can take wives, you can take children, because they're spectacular holiday destinations in their own right. Long gone are the days where you're going to get into a lot of trouble for taking your better half up onto some midge-ridden river in either Scotland or Norway, and they're sat there in the pouring rain wondering why on earth you're obsessed with this sport that you seem to have got into your head. It opens a whole new world of destinations that you can visit, sandy beaches, tropical paradise, tropical water, ocean that they can swim in, and all of these places are beautiful places to visit in their own right. So saltwater fly fishing can quite often go hand in hand with a fantastic family holiday. So to finish up, when you're looking outside and the winter is coming and it's grey and it's cold and it's miserable and you're beginning to get that itch that you need to go fishing, I would urge you to think about trying fly fishing in saltwater. I think it could just about blow your mind. I'll see you on the next one.